Why didn't her heart race when his hands closed around her throat? The changing room smelled of concrete, sweat, and something older, resentment baked into the walls over years of unspoken hierarchies. Institutional green paint, metal lockers dented by careless boots, a single security camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily, indifferent to intent or rank. Major Derek Sullivan's thumbs pressed into the soft hollow beneath her jaw with practiced precision. Not rage-blind, not sloppy. This was a man who knew exactly how much pressure it took to dominate another body. 40 pounds, enough to collapse airways, enough to make panic take over. Alina Vance didn't panic. Her heart stayed steady. 58 beats per minute. She didn't claw at his wrists, didn't gasp, didn't beg. Instead, her eyes shifted slightly, not to him but past him to the camera, the red light recording everything. "Major," she said calmly, voice level, almost conversational. "That's aggravated assault, Article 128. Her tone wasn't defiant, it wasn't afraid either, it was factual. Sullivan leaned closer, breath hot with anger that had nothing to do with her. "You think I care about a camera?" She met his eyes now, cold, assessing, not judging, measuring. "You sure about this?" she asked. He had no idea who he was choking. And that ignorance was the most dangerous thing in the room. 3 days earlier, the Humvee carrying Alina to Forward Operating Base Sentinel had rattled along a desert road coated in Arizona dust. The tan paint was sun-faded, the kind of color that came from too many deployments and too little rest. She sat in the back, duffel bag between her boots, watching the land pass by in muted browns and relentless blue. Scrub brush, dry earth, heat rippling the air. She'd seen worse places, quieter places too, the kind that killed you faster. The driver was young, 19, maybe 20. A specialist who knew better than to ask why a Navy Master Chief with a sealed file was being delivered to an Army base with no fanfare. Smart kid. At the gate, the guard checked her ID once, then again, scanned it twice, made a phone call that lasted 4 minutes too long. When he finally waved them through, his expression carried the unmistakable look of someone who'd just been told to stop asking questions. Alina stepped out into the heat and hoisted her bag onto her shoulder. 42 pounds. She knew because she weighed it that morning. She weighed everything. Order kept you alive. Chaos buried you. Inside the admin building, the duty sergeant looked up, froze for half a beat, then stood straighter. "Master Chief Vance, General Price is expecting you. 2nd floor, last door." She nodded and took the stairs, always took the stairs. Know your exits, know your escape routes. Elevators were coffins with buttons. Brigadier General Catherine Price didn't waste time. "Close the door." Alina did, stood at attention, at ease when told, sat when instructed, spine straight, hands folded loosely in her lap. Price studied her like a weapon someone had locked away and forgotten about. "Your file," she said slowly, "is the most redacted document I've seen in 33 years of service." "Yes, ma'am." Technical advisor, Price read, unimpressed. "That's the cover." "That's my assignment." Price snorted, "Horseshit." Alina didn't react. "I worked with your people in Iraq," Price continued. "I know DevGru when I see it." Silence stretched, heavy, deliberate. Finally, Alina nodded once. "Penetration testing, base security, I find the holes, I report them." "And after?" Price asked. 18 months, then I'm done." "For good?" "Yes, ma'am." Price leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Why come back at all?" Alina hesitated, just long enough to be honest. "My daughter," she said. "She's applying to the Naval Academy. This keeps me stateside, close enough if she needs me." Price's expression softened barely. "Your husband?" Alina's jaw tightened, not enough to show weakness, enough to show truth. "Syria, 2019. "I'm sorry." "Thank you, ma'am." When Alina left the office, her cover intact and her mission defined, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Invisible. Her quarters were small, 8 by 10, metal bunk, metal desk, metal locker, a narrow window overlooking the training grounds where young soldiers ran until pain became proof. She unpacked with ritual precision. Uniforms first, folded sharp, stacked exact. Then the personal items. A photograph, her husband, dress whites, crooked grin, the one that had undone her during dive training when they'd both been too tired to remember their own names. She centered the frame carefully. "Made it," she whispered, 18 months. Dog tags came next, hung where she could see them. Then the notebook. Worn leather, soft from years in cargo pockets across 47 countries. Inside the cover, 203 small notches cut with a K-bar. She didn't feel guilt looking at them. She felt responsibility. Each one remembered, each one documented, each one heavy. At 8:20 hours, she closed the notebook and became what the file said she was. Nobody special. The chow hall was loud with laughter and clatter. Alina sat alone, back to the wall, oatmeal, black coffee, routine. That's when she heard his laugh. She didn't need to look up to know why her stomach tightened. When she did, the resemblance hit her hard. Same jaw, same eyes, same way of holding authority without asking for it. Major Derek Sullivan. She looked back down at her tray and took a slow breath. He didn't see her. Why would he? She was just another sailor passing through, just another face in a sea of uniforms. He had no idea the woman sitting 20 feet away had carried his father down a mountain. Not yet. The days settled into a rhythm. Morning PT, 12 miles with a ruck. She kept pace with soldiers half her age. Breakfast alone. Work that actually mattered, network vulnerabilities, outdated encryption, physical security gaps that made her jaw tighten. She filed reports quietly, precisely. Nobody thanked her, that was fine. On the range, she watched Sullivan train his men. He was good, confident, controlled, but his squad was sloppy, young, aggressive without discipline. When he finally noticed her, it was with skepticism. "Expert?" he'd asked like it was a challenge. "Yes, sir." He'd watched her shoot, watched her finish in 8 seconds flat, watched perfect groupings appear where doubt had lived seconds earlier. "Lucky," he'd said. "Yes, sir," she'd replied. Invisible again, but no longer unseen. March 15th came quietly. She marked it alone, notebook open, photograph on the desk. "I tried," she whispered. "I did everything right." The ghosts didn't answer. They never did. And then in the changing room, with concrete walls and a blinking red light, Derek Sullivan's hands closed around her throat. 40 pounds of pressure. 58 beats per minute. And for the first time since she arrived at Sentinel, Alina Vance stopped being invisible. Sometimes dignity doesn't shout. Sometimes it waits. Why did the rumors move faster than the truth? By sunrise, half the base already knew what had happened in the changing room. Not the facts, never the facts, but the shape of the story. The version that traveled best. The version that made sense to people who needed it to. Alina heard it in fragments as she crossed the gravel toward the chow hall. She snapped. Lost it. Women don't belong in places like this. She kept walking. Inside, the air buzzed with voices lowered just enough to pretend they weren't meant to be heard. Trays clattered. Chairs scraped. Conversations bent around her like water around stone. She sat in her usual corner, back to the wall, oatmeal, coffee, hands steady. Her heart rate was 57 beats per minute. 3 tables over, a cluster of rangers leaned close together. Young, loud, certain. I heard Sullivan had to defend himself. Yeah, she went crazy, screaming. Navy'll cover it up, always do. Alina lifted her spoon, took a bite, chewed slowly. The oatmeal tasted like nothing. That was fine. Fuel was fuel. Across the room, Captain Webb sat with Sergeant Reyes. Neither of them laughed. Neither of them spoke. Webb's eyes drifted toward her, lingered for half a second too long, then dropped. Good, she thought. That means the memory is already heavy. She finished her breakfast, cleared her tray, and walked out while the whispers followed behind her like shadows. What none of them knew was that at 17:10 hours the night before, 27 minutes after Sullivan's hands left her throat, she had filed her incident report. Time-stamped, detailed, clinical. Facts didn't rush, they waited. Her work didn't stop just because her reputation was being dismantled in real time. By 900 hours, Alina was back at her desk in the Technical Services Building, sleeves rolled down, posture neutral, eyes on code. She traced vulnerabilities through the base network like old scars of patterns of neglect, assumptions layered over time. Firewall misconfigurations. Outdated encryption keys. Physical access points no one guarded because nothing ever happened there. She documented everything, screenshots, logs, recommendations. The work steadied her, it always had. At 11:03 hours, her inbox chimed. Subject: formal inquiry. Incident report required. She read it once, then again. A complaint had been filed against her. Assault. Conduct unbecoming. She was ordered to submit a written statement and report to the JAG office at 1400. She didn't sigh, didn't curse, didn't feel surprised. She forwarded her already filed report to the address listed. One line in the body of the email. My statement was submitted at 17:10 hours on March 15. All relevant facts are contained therein. Then she went back to work. At 13:30 hours, her phone vibrated. Mom, I got my acceptance letter. Naval Academy, I'm in. The screen blurred for a second. Alina stared at the message longer than she meant to. Her daughter, her reason for choosing a quiet assignment, for saying yes one last time. So proud of you, we'll call tonight, love you. She put the phone face down and inhaled slowly. One crisis at a time. Lieutenant Colonel James Chen's office smelled like old books and quiet resolve. Diplomas lined the walls. Military law texts stacked with care. On one shelf sat a framed photo that didn't belong, a young woman in army uniform, captain's bars, smiling like she believed in the system. Chen noticed her looking. My sister, he said, Captain Michelle Chen. Alina nodded once. She filed a report in 2018, he continued. Against her commanding officer. It disappeared, she didn't. Something tightened in Alina's chest. She didn't interrupt. Chen gestured for her to sit. 3 screens glowed in front of him, documents already open. I've read Major Sullivan's complaint, he said, and I've read yours. They differ, Alina replied evenly. Yes, significantly. He leaned back, studied her. Your report predates his by 19 hours. Yes, sir. Why file immediately? Regulations require immediate reporting of assault, she said, and delays create doubt. Chen's eyes sharpened. You consider what happened in assault. Major Sullivan placed his hands around my throat with sufficient force to restrict breathing and blood flow, Alina said. That meets the definition under Article 128. No emotion, no embellishment. Chen typed something, paused. Major Sullivan claims you attacked him first. That is incorrect. Can you prove it? Yes, sir. Security camera B7, 1, corner of the changing room. Timestamp 1647 to 1651. The footage will corroborate my account. Chen sat very still. You're precise, he said finally. I'm trained to be. He nodded once. I'll review the evidence, and I'll make my decision based on facts, not rank, not branch, not gender. He held her gaze. "Are we clear?" "Crystal, sir." When she left his office, Elena allowed herself one long breath. The system might work. Or it might not. Either way, she would not lie. The base announcement came that afternoon. Mandatory advanced combat dive qualification. All personnel E7 and above. No exceptions. Elena read the notice twice. Dive quals. She hadn't done one in 3 years. Not since her last workup before leaving the teams. Her body remembered, though. Muscle memory didn't vanish. It waited. That evening she pulled her dive gear from the bottom of her locker. Rebreather, seals, valves. She checked everything twice, then again. Behind her, her husband's photograph watched in silence. "Still got it," she murmured, "just water." The facility was cold enough to bite. An Olympic-sized pool plunging into darkness, its lower levels twisted into tunnels and compartments designed to break composure. 40 soldiers lined the deck, gear heavy, faces tight. Sergeant Major Dutch Holland stood at the control station, stopwatch in hand. Older now, prosthetic hidden beneath his uniform, the same eyes that had once watched an 18-year-old Elena refuse to quit. Sullivan's team went first. Rays splashed too much, panicked in the tunnel, failed. Webb made it through barely, 18 minutes, nearly drained his air. Sullivan followed, strong, aggressive. 16 minutes 54 seconds, he surfaced smirking. "Beat that," he said. Dutch didn't respond. At 12:45 hours, he called the last name. "Master Chief Vance." The deck went quiet. Elena stepped forward, gear already fitted. Weight settling familiar on her spine. She closed her eyes. 4 seconds in. 7 hold. 8 out. Her heart rate dropped. Dutch leaned close. "Remember Coronado?" "Water's a friend," she replied. She stepped off the platform. No splash, just entry. She vanished into the blue. In the control room, monitors flickered to life. Her breathing cycle slow. Controlled. She entered the tunnel not by force but by flow. Fingertips grazing walls, reading space like language. Dutch leaned closer to the screen. "Impossible," he whispered. She reached the mine in 6 minutes, disarmed it in just over 1, no hesitation. The flooded shaft tried to catch her, a snag, a moment. She stopped, adjusted, continued. When she surfaced, Dutch stopped the watch. 9 minutes, 41 seconds. Silence crushed the deck. Elena climbed out, removed her gear, no celebration, no acknowledgement. Dutch cleared his throat. "Best time this facility has ever seen." Someone clapped, then another. Sullivan didn't. He stared like a man realizing the ground beneath him was thinner than he believed. The second round began. Webb volunteered. Halfway through, his rebreather failed. Carbon dioxide built fast. He panicked. On the deck, Elena saw his vitals spike. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her mask and dove. No orders, no permission. Just instinct. She found him thrashing in the dark, eyes wild, controlled his arms, shared her air, calmed him. 3 breaths for him, 1 for her. Up slow, controlled. At the surface, Webb collapsed, sobbing, alive. Elena checked his airway, then walked away. Behind her, Sullivan stood frozen, watching the woman he tried to destroy save his man's life without pause. Sometimes the truth doesn't argue. It simply shows up, calm, precise, undeniable. Why did the base go quiet when her name was called? The silence arrived before the verdict. It crept through hallways, lingered in doorways, settled into conversations that stopped the moment Elena passed. People looked at her differently now, not with dismissal, not even with suspicion, but with uncertainty. The kind that came when a story cracked and no one was sure which version would survive. At 600, the base loudspeaker chimed. Master Chief Alina Vance, report to headquarters. Immediate. No rank padding, no explanation. She finished lacing her boots anyway. Slow, methodical, one loop at a time. She straightened the photograph on her desk, the one of her husband in dress whites, then paused, fingertips resting on the frame. "If this is it," she whispered, "you were worth it." Outside, the flag snapped sharply in the wind. Morning air bit through fabric. A formation was already gathering near headquarters, not officially, but close enough to pretend coincidence. Sullivan stood near the front. He didn't look angry today. He looked tired. The kind of tired that came from watching something slip beyond reach. Alina walked past him without breaking stride. Inside the conference room, 4 people waited. Brigadier General Price, Lieutenant Colonel Chen, Sergeant Major Dutch Holland, and one unfamiliar face, civilian clothes, posture military, intelligence. The door closed softly behind her. "Master Chief Vance," Price said, at ease. Alina remained standing. Chen folded his hands. "The security footage corroborates your statement in full." No dramatic pause, no build-up. Just truth. Sullivan's complaint, Chen continued, contained inconsistencies, timeline gaps, physical movements that didn't match the footage. His hands around her throat were clear, undeniable. Price spoke next. "Major Sullivan has been relieved of command pending further action." Alina felt it then, not satisfaction, not triumph, but something heavier. Relief laced with loss. Dutch shifted his weight. "I watched you in that pool," he said. "I've watched a lot of people break in my career, you didn't." The civilian cleared his throat. "Master Chief Vance, I'm Mr. Hale. I represent a joint oversight group." Alina finally sat. Hale slid a folder across the table. "No markings, no seals." "We've been tracking a pattern," he said. "Security failures, insider compromises, near misses. Your reports align with data we couldn't place." Alina opened the folder. Satellite imagery, network schematics, photos she recognized. "This base," Hale continued, "is a test case. Someone wanted to see what you'd find." And Alina asked, "And you found everything?" Price leaned forward. "Which means your assignment just changed." Alina closed the folder. "With respect, ma'am, I came here to do one job, and I intend to finish it." Price met her gaze. "You already did." The room held its breath. Hale spoke carefully. "We believe there's a coordinated effort targeting stateside installations, not foreign, domestic, contractors, disgruntled veterans, people who know how we think." Alina's jaw tightened. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Too long," Hale admitted. Dutch's voice dropped. "We need someone who can walk through this place unseen, someone who doesn't trigger alarms, someone who already proved she can take a hit and keep her mouth shut." Alina exhaled slowly. "Say it," she said. Price didn't hesitate. "We want you embedded, quietly. No authority, no protection. You find out who's leaking, who's testing us, and how deep it goes. And when I'm done," Price's eyes softened, "you walk away clean." Alina thought of her daughter, Annapolis, white uniforms, hope. "I want it in writing," she said. Hale nodded. "Already drafted." The news didn't spread officially. It didn't need to. By noon, everyone knew Sullivan was gone. By dinner, everyone knew why. Apologies came in different forms. A nod in the hallway. A tray slid beside hers at chow. A quiet thank you from Webb, eyes still haunted. She accepted none of it openly. She didn't need it. That night she sat on her bunk, notebook open. The notches stared back at her. She added one more. Not for violence. For restraint. 2 days later, the breach attempt came. It started small, a badge malfunction at the motor pool, logged as an error. Then a power fluctuation in a storage building that held nothing important. Nothing important was ever true. Alina noticed the timing, the gaps, the way systems reset just enough to erase intent. She followed the pattern after hours, hoodie up, rank stripped away by shadow. She moved like she always had peripheral vision wide, attention narrow. At the maintenance shed near the perimeter, she stopped. Footprints fresh, too careful. She waited. Minutes passed, wind rattled metal. Then a voice, low, familiar. Told you the window was tight. Another replied, she's still here, the sailor. A pause. She's just a tech. Alina stepped into the light. Wrong, she said. They bolted. She chased the second, longer stride, heavier breath. She cut the angle, tackled him clean, pinned his arm before he could reach the knife. She didn't strike him. Didn't need to. Who sent you? She asked. He laughed, nervous. Doesn't matter. She leaned closer. It does if you want to walk out of here. He swallowed. Sentinel's just one node, he said. You're too late. She stood, cuffs tight, and keyed her radio. Dutch, she said, we have a bigger problem. At dawn, helicopters lifted off, quiet, unmarked. The base woke to an alert it would never fully understand. Alina stood alone near the flight line, watching the sky turn pale. Her phone buzzed. Mom, orientations in June. I wish Dad was here. Alina typed back with shaking hands. Me too, but I'll be there. She looked once more at the horizon. This wasn't about proving strength. It never had been. It was about standing still when the world tried to choke you, and choosing not to become what hurt you. Sometimes resilience isn't loud. Sometimes it waits until the moment you're needed, and then steps forward without asking permission. Why did she feel more exposed now that everyone finally believed her? The helicopters were gone by sunrise, their rotors fatting into a sky that looked too peaceful for what had just been uncovered. Forward operating base Sentinel returned to routine the way institutions always did, quickly, deliberately, as if speed could erase memory. Alina watched it happen from the edge. She stood near the motor pool, hands in her jacket pockets, posture loose, unremarkable. Soldiers passed her without saluting now, not out of disrespect, out of confusion. They didn't know who she was supposed to be anymore. The woman who'd been choked in a changing room. The sailor who'd shattered a dive record. The operative who'd caught a leak no one else had seen. None of those fit neatly into a single box. She preferred it that way. By mid-morning, the official narrative had settled. The attempted breach was labeled a training anomaly. The detainees were contractual irregularities. The helicopters were routine transfers. Truth trimmed to fit. Alina returned to her desk and opened her terminal. No new orders, no acknowledgments. That was deliberate too. She was most useful when forgotten. Her screen filled with logs she hadn't reviewed yet, small discrepancies, time stamps out of rhythm. She flagged them silently, building a map no one else could see. She felt it then, not fear, not doubt, but a quiet pressure behind her ribs. Exposure. When you were invisible, danger came from the front. When people believed you, it came from the sides. That afternoon, Sergeant Major Dutch Holland found her on the range. She was alone, prone, rifle steady against her shoulder, not training officially, just remembering. The paper target downrange bore a tight cluster dead center. Dutch stood behind her for a long moment before speaking. "You're drifting," he said. Alina didn't look up. "I'm thinking." "That's what I mean." She rolled onto her back, eyes on the sky. "They'll try again." Dutch nodded, different angle. "They always do." He crossed his arms. "You didn't stay retired very well." A corner of her mouth lifted. "Neither did you." Silence stretched between them, the comfortable kind built over shared water, shared failures. You ever regret it? Dutch asked, staying. Alina considered the question carefully. I regret things, she said, but not that. Dutch studied her. This one's closer to home. Yes. You ready? She sat up. I don't have to be ready, I just have to be precise. That earned a grunt, approval in Dutch's language. Before he left, he paused. Your daughter called the office. Alina's breath caught. Is she? She just wanted your mailing address. For uniforms. Alina nodded, throat tight. Thank you. Dutch hesitated. She sounds like you. Alina watched him walk away and hoped that wasn't entirely true. The second attempt came disguised as compliance. A contractor audit, clipboards, clean boots, people who smiled too easily and asked the wrong questions with the right tone. Alina watched from the sidelines, badge clipped low, hair tucked under a cap. She listened more than she spoke. Patterns emerged. They avoided certain rooms. Asked about schedules they shouldn't care about. Logged serial numbers too carefully. At lunch, one of them sat across from her uninvited. Long assignment, he asked casually. Depends, Alina replied. On what? How quiet it stays. He smiled. You don't talk much. I listen. He chuckled. That can be dangerous. So can talking, she said. His smile faltered just slightly. That night, Alina broke into the audit team's temporary office. No alarms, no mess. She copied files, rerouted logs, replaced everything exactly as she found it. At 2:17 hours, she found the anomaly. A dead drop scheduled 48 hours out. Physical, old school, inside the base perimeter. Someone trusted the system, enough to think no one would look twice. They were wrong. Sleep came in fragments. She dreamed of water again, dark, endless, pressing in from all sides. She woke with her heart racing for the first time since the changing room. 82 beats per minute. She sat on the edge of her bunk until it slowed. You're still here, she whispered to herself. She thought of her husband's voice, calm, dry. Pressure only wins if you let it decide who you are. She stood, dressed, and waited for morning. The drop site was an abandoned storage bunker near the eastern fence line. Rusted door, no power, easy to forget. Alina arrived early and took position above, hidden among scrub and shadow, rifle steady, scope dialed low. At 19:04 hours, a figure approached. Not a contractor. Not military. A woman. Young, civilian clothes, nervous energy. She carried a small pack tight against her chest. Alina's finger rested near the trigger, but something held her still. The woman knelt, opened the bunker door and froze. Alina Vance, she said without turning. I was wondering when they'd send you. Alina stood slowly, weapon lowered but ready. Who are you? She asked. The woman turned, mid-20s, eyes sharp despite fear. Someone who doesn't want to do this anymore, she said, and someone who knows what they'll do to my family if I stop. Alina approached carefully. You're leaking information. I was, the woman corrected. I fed them enough to keep them patient, not enough to get anyone killed. Yet, the woman swallowed. I tried to quit. And they showed me my brother's commute. Silence fell heavy. Alina felt the old anger stir, the kind that burned cold. Names, Alina said. The woman hesitated. Alina softened her voice. I can't promise you safety, she said, but I can promise you truth and a chance to end this. Tears welled. I didn't think anyone would see me. I did, Alina said. That's why I'm here. By midnight, the board was laid bare. 3 contractors, 2 facilitators, 1 retired officer who'd learned how to sell his knowledge. By dawn, arrests would come. But Alina didn't feel victorious. She watched the woman sit on the bunker floor, arms wrapped around her knees, shaking. "Stay with me," Alina said quietly. "I'm scared," the woman whispered. "I know." Alina sat beside her, back against cold concrete, and waited for the sun. When the operation concluded, there were no speeches. Just quiet acknowledgments, files sealed, transfers approved. Price found Alina near the hangar. "You did good," she said. Alina met her eyes. "I did what needed doing." Price nodded. "Your 18 months just got shorter." Alina blinked. "How short?" 6 weeks, Price said. "Then you're out, really out." Alina felt something loosen inside her chest. "Thank you," she said. As Price walked away, Alina looked out over the base one last time. She thought of the girl in Annapolis, the woman in the bunker, the version of herself she'd buried years ago to survive. Strength wasn't dominance. It wasn't volume. Sometimes it was the choice to stay gentle in a place that rewarded cruelty. Sometimes dignity didn't speak at all. It simply stayed long enough to change the room. Why did leaving feel harder than staying ever had? The countdown had begun, though no one announced it out loud. 6 weeks sounded short on paper. In practice, it stretched like a thin wire pulled tight, humming with unfinished things. Alina felt it everywhere. In the way people looked at her now, not hostile, not dismissive, but careful. As if proximity to her carried weight they didn't know how to handle. Respect could be just as isolating as contempt, sometimes more. She packed nothing. Not yet. Each morning she ran the same route around the perimeter fence, dust under her boots, sunrise breaking over concrete and wire, her breathing steady, her thoughts less so. She'd spent 2 decades learning how to arrive unseen. No one had taught her how to leave. The base changed subtly when pressure lifted. Smiles returned too quickly. Laughter filled spaces that had felt hollow days earlier. Commanders shook hands. Paperwork moved. Closure manufactured on schedule. Alina knew better. Threats didn't disappear, they adapted. That was why she noticed the man near the communications annex on a Wednesday afternoon. Wrong posture, wrong stillness. He stood like someone waiting for permission that would never come. She didn't approach. She watched. 2 hours later she flagged his badge activity. Clean, too clean. By evening she had a name, not on any watch list, not anymore. Retired Army, logistics, quiet discharge. Someone who knew how to wait. She filed the note and let it go. Her job wasn't to finish the world, just her part in it. That night she dreamed of the changing room again. The concrete walls, the camera, the pressure at her throat. But this time her hands were empty. She woke before dawn, heart racing, 89 beats per minute, and sat in the dark until it slowed. "I'm not there anymore," she told herself. But the body remembered before the mind caught up. She dressed and went to the range. The rifle felt heavier than it used to. Not physically, something deeper. She lay prone, lined up the shot, breathed out. Didn't fire. She lowered the weapon and stared downrange at the unmoving target. 20 years of training had taught her how to pull a trigger without hesitation. No one had taught her how to live without the necessity of it. Dutch found her there again. "You're hesitating," he said. Alina didn't argue. "I don't want to need this anymore." Dutch nodded slowly. "That's not weakness." "I know." "It's transition," he said. "Ugly part." She rolled onto her side. Did it ever stop feeling like this? Dutch considered. No, but it got quieter. That was something. Her daughter called that evening. "I tried on the uniform," the girl said, breathless with excitement. "It feels heavy, in a good way." Alina smiled, a real one this time. "It should, it means something." "I wish you were here." "I will be," Alina said, "soon." There was a pause. "Mom," her daughter said carefully, "are you okay?" The question landed harder than any accusation ever had. Elena looked around her room, bare walls, packed life reduced to function. "I'm learning how to be," she said honestly. "That sounds like you're doing something brave." Elena closed her eyes. "It feels like I'm letting go." Her daughter laughed softly. "Dad would say that's the same thing." Elena swallowed. He would. The final incident didn't announce itself. It arrived quietly, wrapped in familiarity. A late-night alert, a minor discrepancy, something any other analyst might have dismissed. Elena didn't. She followed it to the communications annex, the same place, the same shadowed corner. The retired logistics officer stood inside this time, hands steady, movements efficient. He didn't run when she stepped into the light. "I wondered if it would be you," he said. "Why are you still here?" Elena asked. "Because I don't know how to be anywhere else." The truth in his voice surprised her. "You could have left," she said. "So could you." They stood there, two people shaped by the same machine, unsure how to stop moving once the gears slowed. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," he said, "just to prove I still matter." Elena felt the weight of that, the danger of it. "Meaning doesn't come from damage," she said. He smiled sadly. "That's easy to say when you're still useful." She stepped closer. "You are just not like this." For a moment, she thought he might listen. Then the alarm tripped. Reflex took over. She disarmed him cleanly, controlled, no strikes that weren't necessary. When security arrived, the man looked at her once more. "I hope you figure it out," he said. She nodded. "You too." The paperwork took days. Statements, reviews, quiet approvals. Price called her into the office one last time. "You could stay," the general said. "We'd make a place for you." Elena considered it, truly. Then she shook her head. "If I stay, I won't know who I am without this." Price smiled faintly. "That might be the bravest thing you've said." Elena stood, permission to depart early. Granted. Her final morning at Sentinel arrived without ceremony. No formation, no speech, just a gate opening and a vehicle waiting. She carried her duffel, still 42 pounds, and paused once before stepping in. She looked back at the base. At the place that had tested her silence, her restraint, her truth. She didn't feel bitterness. She felt gratitude. For the reminder that strength wasn't endless endurance. Sometimes it was knowing when to stop. As the vehicle pulled away, Elena rested her head against the window and closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she wasn't listening for threats. She was listening for herself. And somewhere beneath the quiet, she heard its small, uncertain reel. Hope. Why did the quiet feel louder than any battlefield she'd ever left? The road away from Sentinel stretched long and empty, desert giving way to scrub to open highway. Elena watched it roll past the window without counting miles, without marking exits. For once, there was nowhere she needed to be alert for, no threat profile to build, no pattern to anticipate. The absence of purpose felt like vertigo. She reached the airport before noon. Civilian terminal, families, laughter that didn't lower itself when uniforms passed. She moved through it like a visitor from another language, duffel slung over her shoulder, eyes still scanning even as she told herself she didn't have to. Old habits didn't vanish, they softened. At the gate she sat with her back to the wall out of instinct, then smiled faintly at herself and turned the chair around. It felt wrong, exposed, necessary. When the plane lifted, the ground fell away cleanly. No dust, no blast of heat, just distance. She didn't look back. Annapolis greeted her with spring rain and stone buildings that smelled faintly of history and ambition. Elena stood outside the gates longer than she needed to, watching midshipmen hurry past in crisp uniforms that still felt too new on them. She spotted her daughter immediately. The girl stood straighter than Alina remembered, hair cut sharp, eyes bright with something untested but fierce. "Mom!" The word broke something open. Alina dropped her duffel and pulled her into a hug that lasted longer than protocol would ever allow. She felt the strength there, the youth, the hope. "I made it," her daughter said, voice trembling with pride. "Yes," Alina replied softly, "you did." They walked the grounds together. Alina listened more than she spoke, letting her daughter fill the space with stories of classes and drills, and the shock of realizing how much was expected. "You scared?" Alina asked gently. Her daughter nodded, a little. "Good," Alina said, "means you care." They stopped near the river. Wind off the water tugged at their sleeves. "I know you don't talk about it," her daughter said carefully. "What you did." Alina watched the water move. Some things are better carried quietly. Her daughter considered that. "I want to be strong like you." Alina turned to her then, really looked. "Strength isn't what people think it is," she said. "It's not how much you can endure, it's knowing when to speak and when to stop." Her daughter nodded, absorbing it the way young people do, imperfectly, sincerely. That night, alone in a borrowed apartment, Alina unpacked for the last time. Uniforms folded away, gear stored, the notebook placed gently in a drawer she didn't lock. She took out the photograph of her husband and set it on the windowsill. "I got her here," she said quietly. "She's going to be okay." The city hummed outside, life indifferent and ongoing. For the first time in years, the memories came without edges. Not ambushes or commands, just faces, laughter, shared silence. She let them come. She let them go. Weeks passed. Alina found work teaching, not tactics, not combat, but decision-making, ethics under pressure, how to slow the moment down when adrenaline tried to steal your judgment. Her students didn't know her history. That was intentional. She corrected gently, asked questions instead of giving answers, watched people learn how to trust themselves without becoming dangerous. At night she ran along the river. No fence lines, no perimeter, just movement for its own sake. Sometimes she still woke before dawn, heart racing, the echo of hands at her throat lingering just long enough to remind her she was alive. Each time she breathed through it. 4 in. 7 hold. 8 out. It passed. On a quiet Sunday morning, Alina sat on a bench near the academy chapel and watched new cadets line up, nervous energy vibrating through them. She recognized it instantly, the hunger to prove worth. She didn't envy it. She didn't resent it either. She felt something close to peace. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dutch. "Heard you're teaching, figures, world safer that way." She smiled and typed back. "Tell them water's still a friend." "Always was," came the reply. As the sun climbed, Alina closed her eyes and listened to the sounds around her, footsteps, voices, bells in the distance. No alarms. No whispers. Just life, unfolding without her needing to control it. She thought back to the changing room, the concrete, the pressure, the moment where dignity had chosen not to fight back with noise but with truth. She hadn't won by overpowering anyone. She won by refusing to disappear. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It doesn't shout or demand belief. It simply acts quietly, precisely, and leaves the world changed just enough for the next person to breathe easier. Alina Vance stood, shouldered her bag, and walked forward into a life that finally belonged to her.